很欢迎各位来听这个特别的讲座。那这个官员呢，他从 New Jersey 过来很不容易，所以他正在路途当中，已经到了那个7号站的总站 Main Street， 所以应该走路过来差不多10分钟吧。所以我们可以再等个10分钟的时间。在这个时候呢，我也稍微跟各位解释一下这个讲座的情况哈。首先，我要向社区朋友道个歉。为什么呢？因为我组织这个讲座的时候呢，我准备呢就是用直播的方式，所以更多的民众可以就上网就可以看了，就不需要跑来这边。那可能是一个沟通不良吧。我跟这个联邦政府的这些官员沟通的时候呢，大家有一个不是太清楚的地方。我知道 ICE 这个部门啊，这个部门叫联邦移民及海关执法，叫 ICE Immigration Custom Enforcement 的意思是执法部门。这个部门呢是特别严谨的，它跟这个 USCIS 很大的差别。USCIS 呢，就是给福利的，比如说你申请绿卡啊、申请公民啊，各种各项的福利，它是 USCIS 移民局批的，所以它没有必要隐藏它的身份。当然，它也不是随便的来露面。但是 ICE 就不一样 ，ICE 呢是联邦国土安全部底下的另外一个分部，他们专门是执法的。执法呢，而且他要去进入社区，跟各州政府、地方政府合作，要逮捕、抓那些犯罪的分子，包括了很严重的罪犯、人口贩卖、贩毒、走私、偷渡，很多这些类型的刑事的案件，犯人，他们把他抓了以后拘留，然后遣返。所以意思说呢，他们是相当保密的，他们不要人家看见他们是谁。所以一听到说我要直播，吓死他们了。本来2个高官要过来的，其中一个叫 A 法是蛮大的一个很高级的官员，他一听到的时候就马上说我不来了，不来了。另外有一个是华裔的，专门是拘留所，拘留那些有问题的人。他一听到也吓坏了，他也不来。所以现在我最终呢找到了其中一个公关就是对外公关的，那他就不会有那种的问题。他身份，因为他不是直接跑到街上去采取逮捕行动的，所以他觉得好陈牧师，我愿意来跟市民分享。所以今天呢，本来是3个。变成1个，不过没关系。我觉得这是重点呢，就是我们对这个联邦政府的这些执法的细节、各方面的项目有一个清楚的了解。否则的话，很多时候是误导了，也不知道。比如说一个人被逮捕了，或是每个人都人心惶惶，究竟我没有身份，或是我逾期拘留，那是否我碰到一个移民局执法部的，他马上就把我抓起来呢？我想这都是很多社区引起那种恐慌的这种状态。所以呢，我特别就邀请他们来所以有小小的误会，跟他们有一些沟通上的问题，所以在这里道歉。就是以后呢，就是我们沟通上也需要有一个比较清楚的彼此的了解。上次移民局来，他没有太大的问题，因为我刚才说他不是执法，不是抓人的，他只是解释移民局整个运作的方式。所以那一次呢，在油管里面就直播了。那我们在海报上也发了一个链，这个链呢就是回顾一下，上次讲得很好，这个移民局的代表他来讲了1个多小时，这基本的移民法他都能够清楚的介绍，我觉得很重要。很多时候 我们的移民群体呢，受害者就是因为他们对基础的观念不了解，所以他跑到一些不良的律师也好、事务所也好，他们就把自己的情况告诉这些代表人律师代表等等，但是因为他基础的移民法不清楚，所以律师怎么样说他也听不懂，反正就全部交给你，所以结果就弄得一塌糊涂。所以上一次的我觉得很值得各位上网再去浏览一下、重温一下，这样的话，我想对我们的家人、对我们的邻舍、对我们的社区，肯定大有帮助的。你要知道Immigration and Custom 是包括海关的，所以呢，这个海关，你看现在的那个南边的疆界，我们的边防也是牵涉到 ICE， 所以呢，很多涌进来的这些难民也好，申请政庇，各种各样的从国外来的过境的人呢，也是要经过这些 ICE 的一些的，不是马上经过 ICE， 它首先要经过是所谓 CBP， 又另外一个部门，所以总共有3个分部，一个是 Immigration and Citizenship Services USCIS， 一个是 USCIS Immigration Custom Enforcement， 这是执法的，另外一个部门呢是 CBP Custom and Border Protection， 就是海关跟这个边防的这个保护，所以 CBP 就是要守护这个美国的边界的，南边、北边都有的。所以你等于是过关，连飞机场也是属于 CBP， 所以美国人从国外回来的时候呢，经过入境的检查呢，就是属于 CBP 了，所以它是跟海关合并在一起，所以是有3个不同的分部集合在一起。那所以 CBP 一个人进来的时候，首先是 CBP 鉴定这个人有资格进来，那就盖个印就进来。在南方就不是了，现在乱套了，因为南方现在千万的人偷渡过河那个 Rio Grande 这条河从南边偷渡过来，也从沙漠 Arizona 边界的 Texas 还有 Tijuana 是 California 的 Tijuana， 那些全部都是边界边防的地方，他们用这种方式来偷渡过来。那这个就也是属于 CBP， 但是进来以后发现他没有资格申请到任何的福利，他不符合任何的政府的保护，所以呢就 ICE 就进来了，就因为他居留在某一个地方嘛，那居留的期间就属于现在这个部门 ICE 这个部门来去管理、去处理事情。所以呢，这个叫 detention 居留，居留了不单只是边界的居留，每一个地区都有居留所。我想在曼哈顿其中也有一个移民居留所其实里面我知道也有一些中国人在被拘留当中。我前几年呢，曾经发起了一个监狱的事工，本想呢就是要接触这些被拘留的人士华侨，结果呢太严格了，太多问题。我只探访了一些一般的监狱的这个人物，但是没有机会进入移民局的拘留所。所以呢，盼望我透过这一次认识这位ICE 的官员呢，看看我们有没有机会在纽约里面也探访一些被拘留的，因为我觉得很可怜的很多，因为他不懂法律，他被抓了关了，也不知道自己的权利在哪里，在遣送的期间，他也无法找到一些适合的人给他做这个代表，然后帮忙他们，他可能家人也不知道怎么样处理这些事情，所以我觉得这个也是，我觉得殷牧师也在这里，我们做牧师们的是对社区的关怀，不仅仅是宣扬上帝的福音，其实我们也是要服侍那些弱势的群体， 包括了这些移民，他们没有身份，他们在一种落难的光景，相当悲惨的那种的生活的环境里面，那我们也尽量的能够帮助他们。不见得我们能够解决他身份的问题，因为这是法律，这是律师还有法庭的问题。但是作为一个牧者，我们是希望能够把上帝的爱来传达给他们，所以这也是我们希望能够做得到。我希望透过他能够找到这个进口，你知道吗？找到一个切入点很不容易的。我不知道你明不明白，特别是官方的，你要切进去的时候，我当时邀请他们，我做了很多时间的准备功夫，做了很多联系邀请，而且是正式的邀请，不是透过关系的，都是正式的渠道做出邀请。然后他们也不是一下子都答应的，所以要等，所以几乎筹备了3、4个月的时间才可以有这样的机会。所以我希望不要我自己不要错过这样的机会。我觉得市民也需要多一点的来去参加类似这种的讲座，因为这种是一种教育性的讲座。教育就是一种知识嘛，你知识你越多，掌握的正确的管道的知识的时候，你就变成了一个知道怎么样处理事情，而且呢能够不是受到那种恐慌的那种影响，因为很多人不认识、没有基本的认识的时候，他心里就慌了，是吧？没有底遇到问题的时候，人家这样说拘留了怎么办？那我过期了怎么办？很多这些心里面会挣扎的，很多不平和的地方，所以我们也是尽量用这种方式来去帮助市民解决问题。那我们这里也有一些律师的团队，那我们有专业的律师，经常呢就真的是有爱心的，把自己的时间来奉献出来，是免费的给市民做一些法律上的咨询。所以呢，如果朋友们你认识有家人或是社区的朋友是有法律这方面的咨询的话，我欢迎你跟我们联系。我们今天会分2个部分一个的就是他的工作的内容，很简单的介绍一下，主要是 Ice 的做的一些事情。然后第2部分就进入那个比较执法的那些的程序等等，所以比较。所以因为 Ice 给人的印象都是怎么样说要抓人等等，所以大家有一种恐慌。他说他希望跟你们讲完以后呢，大家觉得 Ice 变成 nice。
Anyway, 你好 everyone. That's all I know. Anyway, before I begin, I would just like to thank you all in deep felt appreciation and love for Pastor Mike. We've known each other for, a couple of years, right? For a few years? Not that long, no. Yeah. We've been what you would call phone friends. We haven't seen each other in person. So I was excited to come and speak to you guys, but mostly I was excited to come and get a hug from Pastor Mike.
I'll give you a big hug later.
Okay. So, is this the...
Yeah, this is the remote control.
Let
me see it. Let me see it again.
I see it's on.
Mm-hmm.
I like that one.
Basically, if you want to move down, the next one, you're going to press the down arrow.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. Oh,
yes.
Oh, that's the ERO.
请你换一下，先做另外一个 OPE 那个。Sandy, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to sit because...
Oh, please do, Pastor Mike. I'm standing up because of it.
All right, no problem.
Okay, there we go. Anyway, hello. My name is Sonia Thomas, and I'm the Community Relations Officer for ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, here in New York City. I cover all the boroughs, Manhattan, Long Island, and Westchester. Those are my areas of responsibility.
Okay. Sonia, before you
Yes,
go
sir?
on, I need to translate, so that means you can
I forgot.
continue, so you have to have a break.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that,
That's
Pastor
all right.
Mike.
So, 他现在介绍他自己的一些背景，主要是他负责的范围呢有长岛啊，主要是纽约市区，ICE 的这个部分的公共关系。Go ahead.
I think I have it down now. Okay. So, I'm not going to bore you by reading each PowerPoint. I don't know about you, but I can't stand going to a presentation and having to sit there and listen to people read the PowerPoint.
I agree. 就是他不希望，就是我们只是坐在底下一直看着这个 PowerPoint， 这个觉得太枯燥了。You're right. Okay.
Okay. So I work for the Office of Partnership and Engagement, OPE. I'm a headquarters employee, which means all my leadership is in Washington, D.C., where the Department of Homeland Security headquarters are.
主要他做的就是他自己在纽约这个地区服务，但是总部因为是联邦政府嘛，所以他总部是在 Washington D.C. 的地方。
It is my job as the community relations officer to do exactly what I'm doing today, to meet with our community stakeholders, federal partners, other agencies, and explain basically what ICE does and what ICE does not do. And we'll get into that later on.
他主要的任务呢，就是一个公关的角色，那主要是协调外展的工作，当然是对象是公众，然后呢，主要的利益相关者，所谓的 stakeholder， 还有社区信仰的组织等等等等。
I know that in the last few years, a lot of immigrant communities have been on edge. Because there are a lot of rumors about ICE rounding up people and doing raids, and I hope that I can address some of your concerns today. And
因为他过去几年呢，就是一直给公众的印象都 ICE 都是专门去抓人，很多的谣言就是 ICE 到处去逮捕，然后就是突击跑到一公司就把人抓走。所以给人家影响了一个印象很不良。
You know, just as a fellow human being, I take my role as the community relations officer very seriously and to heart, because I personally do not believe that anyone should have to live in fear looking over their shoulders.
他作为一个公关的官员呢，他觉得这是他个人的一种的感受，他不认为让别人活在一种恐惧当中。
Okay, so I feel when I do presentations in different, communities, if I can leave knowing that someone's fear has dissipated, or someone's, fear has eased a little bit, then I feel that I've done my job correctly.
他说他的内心就觉得很安稳、很平安。当他知道他所服务的对象听完讲座以后，这种的恐慌能够被消除，这是他心里面觉得最有成就感的一点。
Okay. So I'll finish telling you a little bit about what my office does, and if there are any of you that have other organizations and you would like me to come out and do a presentation, I'm certainly open to that. And at the end of everything, I will give my information and Pastor Mike, of course, has my information.
它是很开放的，就是说，如果其他社区机构愿意来邀请他去进行一些讲座，类似的讲座，因为一次性是很难解释这么清楚。那有需要的话，他随时可以跟他联系。然后呢，就是他安排再做不同的讲座所以有需要的话，你可以向我拿他的这些联系的方式。
So I just did a little bullet list of what I just said a few minutes ago in terms of what my role is as the community relation officer. And just so you know, if you guys have friends or family like in different parts of the country, like I know Pastor Mike does, there is a CRO, a community relations officer, in 25 areas of the country. Wherever there is a federal building, there are one of us to service that area.
他的主要是意思就是在25个州里面都有这些 ICE 的这些公关的办事处，所以基本上他们尽量的与社区来联系去接触这样子。
Okay. So far, so good?
Good.
Okay. So these are some of the outreach efforts that I do on a regular basis. And like I said, my job is to increase local and national awareness of ICE's mission and programs and their priorities. And again, to clarify what ICE does not do.
主要的工作，它就是透过协调，把主要利益的相关者之间的外联工作，还有 ICE 各部门的领导，加强国土安全跟公共安全，提高地方和国家对 ICE 的倡议及整体的使命的认识，这是他要做的任务。
Next time I come, I'm going to do my own translation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you promised me there's a Chinese translator, so I don't have to worry about it. So next time you can bring your own translator.
So there are two distinct components of my agency, the Office of Partnership and Engagement. One is what I told you, the Community Engagement Office. And the other one is very important, and I really make it a point to make a lot of the immigrant communities that I speak with, to make them aware of this second one, which is the vessel.
有两个很特别的，它两个component 就是不同的部分，一个部分就是社区的一种的合作，一个办公室，另外一个是受害者参与跟服务热线。叫 vessel 这个部分。
So in my work, I encounter a lot of victims of crime from immigrant communities, and one of the things that I have noticed is that a lot of victims who are non-citizens are terrified to come forward, or they're terrified to call ICE about what's going on. In this vessel program, the Victims Engagement and Service Line there's an 800 number, and I'm going to share it with you, but it was specifically created to assist non-citizen victims of crime, and I'll get into that later.
它主要是说呢，这个 vessel 这个项目很重要，因为很多是非公民的移民呢，他们实在很恐慌，而且他们是罪案的受害人。比如说人攻击他，人抢他、打他或者怎么样，他不敢报，因为他没有身份。所以这种受害者呢，他们透过那个 Sonia 的 office， 他的办公室里面可以得到一种特别的服务，所以这个 vessel program 是相当重要。
I receive another part of my duties is to work with the victim services and make sure that victims, whether they're a citizen or they're a non-citizen, but the focus is on non-citizens, we don't care about the status. What we do care is no one should be a victim and feel that they have nowhere to go. So with that being said, I get a lot of calls from diverse communities. So let's say I get a lot of calls from people that are from all over the world, women that are here that are non-citizens, that are victims of domestic violence. That's one of the major calls that I get.
其中很多这些受害人也包括甚至是国际性，所以他经常收到一些电话从国外打给他了，就是有一些妇女们有受家暴的这种影响，所以呢就是寻求他们的帮助。
And you can understand, as a woman, it breaks my heart when I get one of those calls, and I find that the victims are very courageous, because if I were in their shoes and I were in a country and I weren't documented, I would be scared to call the police as well. And so instead of the police, victims can call the vessel line, and I'll give you the number in the email.
她作为一个女性，她能够体会、感同身受的知道，如果她自己跑到别的国家里面遭遇这样的情况，她肯定也是相当恐慌的。所以这个 vessel 的 program 呢，就是特别要离开这个本区的一些警察局，因为很多人不知道警察会怎么样处理，所以直接打到联邦政府这个热线 vessel 的热线可以帮助。
So I'm going to ask you a favor, because I can't really do my job effectively if I don't have the community support. And what I'm going to ask you today is, please share the vessel information, which I'm going to give, to your friends and families and colleagues. We don't want anyone afraid to seek help if they're a victim of crime. Excuse me if this is disturbing, but I get a lot of calls, for example, from the African community, where women are victims of female genital mutilation.
他的意思就是说，就不要有这种恐惧的心。他的工作就是希望能够市民举报这样的一些犯罪的案件。他说，特别严重的女性，当然可能在东方不常见。所谓的 female genital mutilation， 就是特别在非洲那些种族里面呢，女性的器官呢是受到这个 mutilation 就破坏啊，就是一种不知道，反正很残忍的、残暴的对女性的性的攻击。
So that's just an example. Again, we see victims of rape, domestic violence, child abuse, you name it. But to summarize, please share that ICE does not care about a victim's status. If they want to seek help and call the vessel number, it's all confidential, and we're here to help.
他的意思就是说，这种重刑的刑事犯罪哈，包括就是家庭暴力，然后小孩子的虐待，还有性侵、强奸，各种各样的犯罪行为呢，对 ICE 的立场来说，他不管这个人有没有身份，这也是跟我们一般人所想的不一样。就我们一般人就你是执法的，因为我没有身份，那你肯定会抓我。但是他现在说了，就是不是这样子，他们不管你有没有合法的身份，只要有这样的一些 犯罪行为发生在某一个人身上的时候，这个受害人是可以直接寻求 ICE 的帮助。
I don't want to leave the men out. I get a lot of calls from men who are the victims of, say, like aggravated assault, shootings, that type of thing. So it's all inclusive.
Yeah, 不仅仅是女性是受害，有时候男的也会受害，包括就是很多枪杀啊，或是人身的攻击啊、暴力的行为啊、抢劫啊等等等等，都是属于受害人，也不仅仅是女性。
So as you see here, this is the dedicated toll-free hotline to the vessel.
这个是不需要付费的，这是热线电话，上面就是直接可以打到 ICE 那边如果万一有这方面的需要。
And we'll make sure that you have this number and some of the other links to some of the websites that are resources for our community before I leave.
等一下他也会把一些网上就是有关的举报的那些案件的这个连接也会发给就投在这个投影片上面。
So to give you an example, let's say you in the blue pants.
他说用你举个例子
Let's say somebody, you're a victim of crime, and you call the vessel hotline.
那假设呢，就是你是一个受害者，一个刑事罪案的受害者，那你去打那个热线的电话。
So what would happen is there are intake specialists who are victim liaisons. So you'll call, oh my gosh, something happened, The first thing they'll ask you is, have you called your local police department? And if you have not, that's fine. If you're a citizen or if you're not scared to call the police, they'll recommend that you call the police first and then call them back.
就是说，假设你是这样的情况，那你就告诉接案的那个人在线上，你告诉他你的情况。那如果你是美国非公民就是没有在这里有身份的话，通常他也会问你有没有在本地的警察局报案。那有时候呢，他会首先建议你到警察局去先报个案。如果报完了案以后，你还是可以再打回电话给这个热线，然后寻求 ICE 不同层面的帮助。特别那些没有合法身份也好等等，因为他有一些等一下讲到下面有一些好处的，就是没有身份的人，因为透过这些受害的情况，甚至可以申请到合法身份。
Okay, so
我卖个关子。
Let's say you called and you're scared to call the police because maybe you or someone in your household is a non-citizen and you don't want the police to come. Understood. Those are most of the calls that we get.
很多时候，很多人打电话的原因就是他不想先到警察局报案，或是担心就是因为家里面有一些人不见得他自己没有身份，可能他家里有一些没有身份，他也不愿意去联系，因为害怕就是会受到影响。
So we understand that. So what will happen is they'll go ahead, they'll take your information, they'll create what they call a case number for you. And then, let's say, if you're here in New York, since I'm the community relations officer, I would get your case.
那就是说，当那个接案员拿到所有的讯息以后呢，他就会弄一个所谓的个案的这个系统里面有一个 folder， 然后呢有一个案的这个号码。那这个号码呢，就如果是在纽约区，那他会转到Sonia 的那边，所以他就可以跟进这个事情，然后他就可以接待这个案件。
Right. Or so let's say you're in Denver, Colorado, then and you're skiing.
那假设你在Denver 这个地方滑雪。
I like that. Then if you called, then the victim liaison would refer your case directly to the CRO, my counterpart in Denver. So does everybody understand how that system will work?
现在明白吗？就是如果事情发生不是在纽约，在 Denver 这个地方滑雪的时候有受到这样的问题侵害的时候呢，你可以打电话到那边 Denver 的 ICE 的 office 热线寻求帮助。
Okay. Now, one of the other components of the vessel program, I also get a lot of calls from families or friends. You don't have to be the victim. Someone can call on behalf of a victim, and they can be a family friend, someone who can translate for the family. It doesn't matter. Should I stop there?
Yeah.
Okay.
所以基本上有时候你不见得你本人是受害人，甚至你可以是家里面的人，或是你认识的人是受害人，也可以使用这个系统 vessel 的系统来去报案。
So, a lot of times I also get calls, from victims, friends, or families, and the person that committed the crime against the victim is, let's say, if they're detained by ICE, I get a lot of calls from victims that are nervous because they know that the person that committed the crime against them is about to be released. And they want to know, when is this person being released? Have they been deported? They want to know the status of the person that committed the crime against them. And again, it goes back to that not having to, live your life looking over your shoulder.
另外一种情况呢，就是那个侵害，就是受害者被受攻击的人呢，被逮捕，然后被拘留了。然后呢，就是当然受害人也会紧张，究竟什么时候放出来啊？什么时候会保释啊？什么时候会满刑啊？等等。所以呢，很多时候也会引起恐慌。所以在这种情形呢，他们也会可以提供援助。But one thing I don't understand is that, like, for example, if they are concerned about the release day of a detained person,
Yes, sir.
So are you going to release that information of the detainee?
We will release the information after it is submitted to the ICE privacy office. So if someone calls and the victim wants to know, okay, this guy, I'm sorry, killed my cousin, because this is real. When are they being released by ICE, and are they being detained? Are they being deported? We can answer that question. However, ICE privacy laws prevent us from releasing information if the person that committed the crime has, it's not on here, but if they have an asylum application pending, we are not allowed to release that information. Or if they have a U or T visa, which is mostly for victims of domestic violence, we can't release that information. So what I would do, let's say you called me, then I would write up your case, I would send it to my leadership. They will vet it and send it to the privacy office to tell me what information I can release. It's not up to me.
OK， 就是我刚才问的问题，就是如果那个人已经被拘留，那是不是也是对这个人会产生影响？就是ICE会把这些什么时候释放啊，什么这些隐私的问题，那他们允许这样做吗？他说，是有特殊的情况底下呢，他也不能够很准确的告诉受害人说这个人是怎么样。比如说那个被拘留的人正在申请政庇，或是他正在也是某种情况底下了，他也是被受到保护的。这种情况他就 斟酌，有一个斟酌权，要告诉你这个人什么时候被释放。所以反正这不是很直接的，马上就可以告诉你这个人状态是什么，因为他们也要就有合法性的，就是来去为这个人保密的。
Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. I'll make sure you guys get the resources. But before we move on, I want to just talk real briefly about the Vine program.
就是这些都是比较所谓的资讯性的 information 的，所以这不是他主要今天要讲的。但是他有一点觉得很重要，就是 VINE 这个项目，他想稍微介绍一下。
So Vine stands for Victim Information Notification Exchange. That's a lot, right?
这是受害人的这个资讯的这个 notification 通知一个系统。
So the Vine, and you'll get the number to this in the link. Let's say what we just talked about, you know that the person that shot you is about to be released from ICE, and you're like, oh my God, are they going to be released into the community?
就是说，如果你知道这个犯罪的人很快就要被释放了，那你很紧张，如果他是强奸犯或者是谋杀人，那肯定你心里面很恐慌嘛，对不对？所以
So anyone can go onto the Vine website, and it's very self-directed. You register, and you will receive electronic notifications about the status, the custody status of the person that committed the crime against you.
所以透过这个系统 Vine 这个系统呢，就是你可以输进去一些基本的资讯。然后呢，他会用电子的方式告诉你这个人是否被释放，将会被释放那种的所谓的情况状态，把它发给你。
So these are some of the contacts that I was referring to. You have the OPE leadership, which is my office. There's the vessel phone number and the web link. And there's the community relations contacts. On this site here, you can find my counterparts all over the country. Like I said, there are 25 of us. Let's say, you want to get a hold of my counterpart in LA. Then you can go to this website. Now, it won't give their name just for privacy, but it will tell you how to contact them. This last one is very important as well. I manage this email address myself in addition to my regular work email. Should I stop?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay. This one, let's say if you have a question, it doesn't matter. Let's say you want an ICE speaker to come, or let's say you have a question about a foreign student, going to school. Whatever it is, this is the place that you email your general questions to. And then what I do is I check it every day, just so you know. And then based on the question, I direct it to the appropriate contact at ICE.
基本上上面那些链都是刚才提过那些不同的项目，但底下那个就是Sunny他自己管理的一个网页。这个网页里面呢，就是比如说你要有一些问题来咨询的时候呢，你可以写在这个网站里面，然后他收到以后呢，他会过滤，然后给你直接的答复，是纽约地区的。
Does anyone want to take a picture of this before I go to the next slide?
Yeah, 如果你们想把它拍个照，你可以把它照下来。So that's the only opportunity they can take a picture, right?
Yes.
Okay. So 如果你需要，你现在可以拍个照。 其他就不要拍了。Okay.
Oh, wait, we still have some. I mean, that's what I do when I'm, at a meeting or something. I just take a picture. And
so you don't want to be yourself on the picture, right? You don't want.
They can take my picture because I didn't bring everyone. So,
Okay.
If you want.
他说你可以拍他的，就是我不知道，but anyway， 他允许就好了。
Yeah, well, I did shower and comb my hair for you guys today.
他很幽默的，他说他已经洗过澡了，梳过头了。
Okay. All right, does everybody have it? We're good? Okay. I just want to take a break right now, Pastor Mike. How are you guys feeling about the information I'm sharing? Is this something useful? Because we have other stuff too. Yes, sir. Hi. Oh, there's actually, I think there are like 5 or 6 languages. Yes.
我有5、6种语言啊，就是因为 Chinese, I
There's an
believe
online
Chinese should be on
translator,
it,
yes.
right? 中文
I'm
应该
not
有。
sure about Mandarin, but I think I've seen the Chinese.
Oh, it doesn't matter Mandarin.
I know. Right? Is it the same?
文字
Oh.
the word, the Chinese character is the same
Oh,
regardless.
okay. Well, forgive
Mandarin
my
or
ignorance.
Cantonese. It's okay.
All right. Okay, so we'll move on. We're going to get into, I think, what you want to know more about. Enough about what I do. Let's talk about ERO, which is Enforcement and Removal Operations.
这个部分就是我要求他的，因为刚才那个部分他自己的工作的范围，现在谈的就是我希望他能够谈到有关于遣返啊、遣送啊、逮捕啊这些程序的事情。
This is the component of ICE that gets, the bad reputation for anytime there is, like on the news or TV or rumors in the community that, there are raids or whatever. This is a component that always gets blamed, and I can tell you right now, it's not always them.
这个部分就是很多人社区有误解也好，或是产生恐慌的地方，就是他们是做大量的不能说大量，就做这个逮捕的工作啊、拘留的事情，所以引起很多民众的恐慌。
And my goal today is to make sure you understand what ERO does and what they don't do. So we'll just dive right in.
这个部分就他介绍一下所谓的 ERO。这 ERO 的代表就是执法 enforcement 就执行的，而且是 removal 的意思是遣返，整个的操作这个 operation 就是操作，它整个过程是怎么样
？So before we get into it, I just want to tell you this, and I'm being very forthcoming about ICE policy. One of the misconceptions about ICE is that we conduct raids. We do not. First of all, we have to get permission from, the courts and from immigration judges to go into any community to detain someone. And when you see ICE in your community, they're not doing a raid. They know exactly who they are targeting. It could be an individual, and you may see a couple of ICE cars or ICE jackets, and that's only because they don't know if that individual has a gun, is there a bomb in the house? So I need you to really understand that we do not conduct raids. It's only targeted enforcement. And the key word is targeted, meaning before they even wake up and brush their teeth in the morning, before they come out to your community, they know exactly who they're detaining, and they have court papers authorizing that. They can't just come and say, oh, you look like a non-citizen, we're going to take you. And I get a lot of those questions, and I'll stop.
It's long enough.
Sorry, I forgot.
Okay, that's okay. 我尽我能力来解释一下，就是人最大的恐慌，社区产生这个恐慌的原因，就是他们误解了这个 ICE 呢，到处去抓人，好像就是很随意的碰到什么，所以你可能看电视节目啊或者什么，会有产生一种错误的印象。因为他们又穿上防弹衣啊，什么带着枪啊，什么很可怕的啊，就好像攻击人家。那其实他的意思说，ICE是不做这个事情，不做突击的这种的任务。他们所做的都是有标靶性的 ，target 就是有标靶性的，不是随意性的。他一定要在法庭，法官拿到手捕令，拿到这个。法官允许他进入这个民区来去抓这个人，所以他们收集大量的证据，已经验证了证实这个人是犯了某一些的罪行，而且呢，就是需要被遣返，各种各样的这些犯罪行为已经得到法庭的认证，他们拿到手捕令，他们才去进行这个。进入人家的房子去把人家带走，所以不要就说你看到 ICE 在外面有汽车在巡逻或者怎么样，马上就觉得好像他们又攻击随意的抓人啊，他们就跑到餐馆啊，跑到一些公司啊等等去抓人，但其实不是所以大家做一个这样的澄清。
So to reiterate what Pastor Mike just said, this is who ERO arrests. It focuses its enforcement on targeting, keyword, non-citizens who pose a threat to national security, public safety, or border security.
主要的对象就是那一些对美国国家安全构成威胁，还有这个公共安全等等这些因素，这个 ICE 才去抓人。
So, as you see, ICE provides, the full legal process. Everyone is entitled to that who is detained by ICE, and 90% of the people, of the non-citizens that were arrested by ICE in 2020 had either criminal convictions or pending criminal charges. And a lot of times we see that the person had criminal charges in their home country and then came here and also committed crimes. And basically that's who ICE is, authorized to detain. We're not looking for anyone who looks like a non-citizen. Our whole priority is public safety.
So basically, I'm posing a question to you. So you guys will interchange information with like Interpol or international crime crackdown, those organizations, and you work together to formulate a policy for arrest, right? Okay.
Specifically, remember when you came to the interfaith event at HSI? Oh, you didn't make it, did you? Right? Okay, so the other component of DHS, aside from ERO, is HSI, which is Homeland Security Investigations. They deal with transnational crime. And so they would be brought in if, let's say, someone's from a different country and they were, say, like a gang member. HSI would investigate that, and then we would collaborate.
因为它里面还有很多不同的部门，其中一个叫 HSI， 就是 Homeland Security 的 Investigation， 就调查部门，专门是他们收集在国际刑警那些资讯，收集到了以后，知道这个人，比如说国际的毒贩、国际的这个诈骗的，或者是人口贩卖的这些人，他已经在国外已经被判罪了，然后他潜逃到美国，类似这样偷渡到美国。那如果经过 HSI 的这个调查的证据，他们就把这些证据呢送给这个 ICE， 然后 ICE 跟他们合作，那 ICE 因为人在美国嘛，所以 ICE 就会去抓他们，所以有彼此机构上的合作。
So a lot of times, again, if you see DHS, Department of Homeland Security officers in your community, again, they're only targeting specific individuals. However, a lot of times, ERO is confused with CBP, which is Customs and Border Protection. A lot of times, CBP is in a community to detain someone, and it's not ICE.
有曾经为什么也产生一些误会呢？就是因为刚才他还没有来，我已经解释过3个部门，另外一个 CBP 就是海关执法的。那很多时候他们分别的操作，分别的在不同社区里面去处理事情，但是看的人他不知道，反正他看的就 DHS 都是同一个国土安全部的执法人员，他们就错误的理解，那本来这不是 ICE 的这个行动，人就把它误解成为是他们这个部门。
When there are concerns in the community, a lot of times when people see ICE or CBP or some other federal law enforcement agency like FBI or whatever, I will receive a phone call from the community leader. Like, for instance, Pastor Mike, if someone calls you from your congregation and says, hey, we see these ICE or CBP people all over the community, are they doing a raid? I can assure you the community leaders, they contact me and they'll say, hey, Sonia, is ICE doing a raid? And I can clarify to the community leader, no. So that's how important it is for me to have a relationship with the different community stakeholders.
所以为什么他这个作为公关的官员的这个职位很重要？他要跟社区来去澄清很多问题，比如假设你们在你的亲友当中或者其他的情况，工作的场所也好，或者私人也好，遇到有这种情形出现的时候，你不知道发生什么事情。那你甚至可以透过比如说你告诉我，我就打电话给他，这是否真的现在 ICE 在这个地方有这个行动，是什么样的行动？所以他的工作就是要使得社区不要产生恐慌，他可以澄清一下这个 ICE 的行动、执法的行动原因是什么。
So if I get a call from a community leader or a concerned citizen where they think there's, quote, a raid, what I'll do is I will contact my counterpart at ERO and I'll say, hey, are you guys, conducting an investigation in Queens or in Brooklyn? And they'll let me know, and then I can relay that information to the community leader.
他意思是说，如果他接到这些的资讯或是询问，他就可以打电话给不同的部门，比如说刚才说 HSI 或是 CBP， 然后都找出那个原因是否在法拉盛这个地区执行行动等等，他就可以向我提出这样的一个资讯，我就可以告诉各位，或者是告诉社区这个状态，所以其实我都需要跟他保持联系。So I'm going to keep in touch with you closely.
Absolutely.
It's just to make sure that if something happened, I have some way to connect to find out exactly what happened.
That's so important. That's why, the communication and the relationship that we have is so important, Pastor Mike. I mean, because you guys help me too, because I won't know what's going on in the different communities unless I have those relationships with the community leaders.
就是我们彼此的帮助。我作为社区，我们服务社区的机构也可以跟他联系，对他也有帮助，他也可以提供正确的资讯给我们，这样子。
So this is my email address and my office phone number. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be very forthcoming. I'm not the best at responding to email in a timely manner, as Pastor Mike can tell you, but I will get back to you.
他说就是他很坦诚的说，你写给他，他不见得马上答你，我都尝过了，我等很久他才回我，我总是会给你有一个答案就是了。
I can't lie in front of Pastor Mike. All right, so we're going to move on to the ERO portion, and before we do, just want to do a check. How's everybody doing? I don't want to bore you. Is this information useful?
你觉得这些资讯有帮助吗？
Okay, good. So we're good to go? All right. Just checking. We're going to go to the ERO one next, Pastor Mike.
可能要换一下那个投影片。
While we're waiting, he'll probably be embarrassed, but I just want to tell you guys, you are so fortunate to have someone like Pastor Mike in your community. I have to tell you, I enjoy working with him. One of the main reasons I'm so fond of Pastor Mike is because I knew from the minute we met, he just has such a passion for his community, and he really cares. So I'd like to give you a hand, Pastor Mike.
Thank you. 我就不翻译了哈，因为他给我戴了很多帽子，所以我就不想翻译了。Okay, yeah, go ahead. Thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I need a Pastor Mike in my neighborhood. All right, so we're going to continue our conversation about ERO, but we'll get into a little more detail, okay? All right, so you already know what ERO is. We did that. This is just basically what the Department of Homeland Security, these are some of the components of DHS. So you see ICE, that's my division, and then you see Customs and Border Protection. They're the ones down on the border that you see guarding the border, but they're also at JFK. They do a great job out there in terms of, seizing large sums of drugs that are smuggled into the country, food like fruits and vegetables that may carry disease. So CBP doesn't just manage the border, they do a lot, especially at the airport. And then you have USCIS, and my colleague from USCIS was here, about a month ago?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Shy. You're talking
Yes.
about Shy, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And she's very resourceful, too. I'm sure she shared her information. So if you guys have questions about, citizenship, green cards, visas, that's not my wheelhouse.
就说上个月我们邀请了就是 USCIS 的官员来，所以呢，如果有问有关于怎么样申请家属啊，或是申请入籍等等，这不是 Sonia 的范围，主要这一张的投影告诉我们有3个部门。那一开始的时候我已经稍微介绍了，所以那就知道。
But if you have questions and you're not sure, I wonder if this is a USCIS question, again, you can either email me or send an email to the outreach mailbox, and I assure you, you'll get a response.
就是你问的一些有关于是移民局的 USCIS 的 question 不属于他的范围，但是他收到的话，他也可以转给那个 USCIS 的部门来给你做一个答案，这样子。
Just don't email and ask me where you should go on vacation. Okay. So we'll skip this because it's and this is just a map of all the ERO field offices across the country. There are, I think, 25. So, and that's why there are 25 of us community relations officers.
所以有25个这个办事处全国里面刚才提过了，他们说有25个像他这样的做社区公关的服务就是有25个ERO的办事处。
Okay, so hold on. This is kind of like a highlight of what we do. These are the civil enforcement priorities that ERO conducts. And again, you know, it's the apprehension and removal of any non-citizen who is a threat to national security, public safety, and border security. The main one is in the middle, public safety. So.
所以主要是介绍一下，也是这个部门重要的一个所谓优先的处理，就 priority， 他们的执法的优先是什么呢？特别是有关于国家安全、公共安全，还有边境的安全3个部分。
And this is all public-facing information. If you guys want to take pictures of it or whatever, it's also on our website.
这些都是所谓的公共可以使用的资讯，所以你要拍照也可以不然的话，在他们自己的网页已经有了这些资讯。
Okay. So we talked about, you know, HSI and CBP. ERO utilizes, you know, intelligence information with a lot of, you know, federal law enforcement agencies, international law enforcement. Those are some of the partnerships. Let's talk about the 287G program. So this one, it was named after the old ICE agency, which was Immigration and Nationalization. So it authorizes ERO to enter into agreements with state and local law enforcement agencies. But one thing I want to tell you, I don't know, can you guys raise your hand if you've heard the term sanctuary city?
在座听过这个庇护城这个名堂没有？你举举手，你听过这个名词吗？这个名词
Okay.
叫庇护城。
Can I get a volunteer to tell me what they think that is?
有没有人说你知道这个庇护城是什么意思啊
Okay, I'll go first.
？OK，
So a sanctuary city, basically, New York is a sanctuary city, New York City.
庇护城就是纽约就是庇护城之一
Yes.
了。
So what that means is, if you're a non-citizen, it makes your life a lot easier because you can take, you know, sanctuary, say like in a church or a house of worship, until, you know, you either get a court date, or if ICE, you know, has an order of removal for you. A lot of times, if you're waiting to get asylum and you're waiting on, you know, your application, a lot of times people take refuge, and that's what the sanctuary city is all about. So it does honestly make it a little challenging for ICE to protect public safety, because what happens is, in the past, let's say someone is arrested by NYPD.
就是庇护城呢，就是基本上它这个政策了是保护一些甚至没有身份的人哈，所以比如说在教会啊，在一些这样的场所里面，纵使没有身份，也这个 ICE 也不会随便去抓人啊，就是所以你看到纽约就是很多人移民到纽约来，那纵使没有一些合法身份预期居留，但是他不会有这个正式的威胁，因为这是一个庇护城，所以警察也不会随便抓一个人，也不会随便向你问你有没有绿卡，这都不是庇护城不会做这些事情的。
So with the sanctuary city policy, it works both ways. Some people agree with it and some people don't. However, when I say that it makes ICE's job very challenging in terms of protecting public safety, prior to New York City becoming a sanctuary city, let's say, again, I'm sorry this is graphic, but this is real stuff. let's say there's a rapist in your community. He's a non-citizen, but he just happens to be arrested by NYPD. Before, we had an agreement where NYPD would contact ICE before that person is released from Rikers or whatever, and we could lodge a detainer on them so that the minute they're released from NYPD, they would go into ICE custody.
所以其实庇护城是构成 ICE 一个作业程序里面一种挑战。这举个例子，就是有一些罪犯，他们被警察逮捕了，然后拘留了。但是他释放的时候呢，以前早期没有政治庇护城的这个政策以前呢，这个警察局释放这个人之前呢，肯定要通知 ICE 的，这 ICE 可以接管过来，那看看这个人是否合乎被驱逐出境这样的一个可能性。但是庇护城就没有了，就把这个观念打消了。所以就等于是给 ICE 很大的挑战，因为他不知道这个人什么时候从警察局被释放出来，特别是一些严重的像强奸犯或是各种这重刑的犯罪的话，他出来的时候就没有通知 ICE， 那 ICE 没有办法。虽然这个人是犯了这么严重的案情，所以有好有不好。
Okay, so now because of the sanctuary policy, you've got criminals that are dangerous being released back into the community, but we have no idea that they were even released from custody. So that's why I say the sanctuary policy does pose a threat to public safety.
所以很多时候是他认为是这个政策庇护城市是影响到地区安全和社区安全。就刚才说了，如果一个严重的犯罪，谋杀案也好等等，他都不知道 ，ICE 根本就不知道这个人什么时候被警察局放出来。当然他还要经过法律的程序审判了等等。但是最少在这个期间呢，ICE是完全不知道。如果知道的话，他们可以立刻采取另一种的行动，看是否把这个人拿走。所以变了是保护社区的安全。但是政治庇护城的这个政策一实行的时候，他们就无法执行。
I get a lot of calls, and I get a lot of threatening calls and emails when someone has been released into the community who is has committed like a dangerous crime. The community always wants to know, well, why didn't ICE detain them? And it's because of the sanctuary policy. If we don't know that they're being released from Rikers or wherever, then we have no reason to know that they're free, and we have no reason to detain them. So that's the quandary. That's the downside of the sanctuary city policy.
就是他向各位吐苦水了，他们也很难做，是吧？因为他想执法，他要找执不行，因为他没有得到这个本地市政府的合作、警察局的合作，所以他们也束手无策。所以有时候他们接到一些投诉的电话，为什么有些罪犯你们还不把他撵出去呢？他们是没办法，因为他不知道，警察局跟他也不合作，没有把这些资讯呢提供给 ICE。那当然 ICE 也要执法，他也要从法庭里面拿到这个所谓的这些执行的命令，他才可以抓人的嘛。所以反正就是他们也有很多难处。
All right, so and that's why I wanted to go back to why it's important to use the vessel and the vine to register, because if we don't know that someone's released by NYPD and they're a murderer or a rapist or they've shot someone, then it's in your best interest to register with the vine if that person has committed a crime against you or someone in your family. Make sense?
所以刚才提到那个 Vine 的 program 就是什么I forgot the whole acronym.
You could just
victim
identification, information notification,
notification, right?
exchange.
这个网站你就可以打输进你知道那些人的情况，这样的反而你就知道这个人是否被保释出来，或者是进行怎么样的状态。所以呢，有很多时候他们是不知道的。
So we talked about, the arrest and the targeted enforcement. This is just basically, some information about the enforcement, the fugitive operations. The Fuge Ops team basically is focused on at-large fugitive non-citizens. We get a lot of non-citizens, as I mentioned earlier, that come here illegally, that are wanted. There's an arrest warrant out for them in their country.
刚才提到了，就是所谓的 fugitive， 就是逃犯，他就明知他自己是没有身份的，而且是已经累累犯罪的，但是他逃离了，到处跑，所以ICE 呢尽量去找他们，去逮捕他们，所以有针对性的来执法。所以逃犯的这个行为呢，是 ERO 通过情报，他们收集不同的情报，还有线索，定位了这个人在哪里，然后去逮捕他们。但是他需要很多人提供资讯，来支持他们，帮助他们找到这个人。
Okay. So just as a follow-up, again, this is who does ERO detain? And these are just some charts to show you who we detain. And again, we detain individuals for the purpose of processing and ultimately removal based on what an immigration judge says. I can't just wake up and say, oh, we're going to detain this person and send them back to Guatemala. That's not how it works. And that's one of the big myths that we understand people believe. We don't have the authority to just wake up and decide to do whatever we want. We are highly mandated by federal law and regulation when it comes to detaining and or removing individuals.
主要的意思，他们也权利上，他们也有限制，他们不能随便的去抓人，随便的判罪等等，因为这是法庭的工作。在美国的司法制度呢，就是有人被这起诉，然后犯罪，那经过法庭的审判，他们确实是已经被判罪了，然后呢，这个 ICE 就可以 ERO 就可以执行这个法律，去把这个人逮捕，然后拘留，然后遣返，这是一个正常的程序，而不是他们喜欢怎么样做就怎么样做，他们没有那么大的权利。
Okay, so enough of the graphs and stuff. I'm getting bored too. I want to talk a little bit about the family staging centers. We maintain these family residential standards by law, and particularly when we have families that are detained, we must adhere to these regulations. So we work a lot of times. Do you guys remember years ago when the families were being, separated at the border? That was not ICE, that was CBP, by the way. So a lot of the children that were separated from their family, from their parents, were taken care of by nonprofit organizations until they could figure everything out. So you'll see at the bottom where it says, we provide families with temporary shelter, food, clothing, legal advice. Anyone detained by ICE is given resources for legal assistance. And by the way, if you guys ever have someone who needs counseling, free legal services, you can contact me. I'm sorry, hold on a minute. Okay. You can contact me and I will, or I could give it to you, Pastor Mike. There's a family service center in each borough here in New York, and it's funded by, I think, the city, but I refer a lot of victims to that resource.
I never heard of this family staging centers. Perhaps we can kind of talk about it.
So this isn't for the public, but I just want to give you guys an idea who takes care of the children. And it's mandated by the Department of Health and Human Services, not ICE.
这是我最新的认识到，原来这是有这所谓的家庭服务中心，就意思当。Does it mean that when a person is detained, then family can seek services at this family staging centers?
No, these are the staging centers where the families are detained.
Oh, families are detained. Okay. 就举个例子吧，比如说在南边的偷渡进来的或怎么样呢，带着小孩的哈，这每天你看到很多报章都报道了，就是他们进来的时候是受到不人道的所谓的处理。但是根据他们现在所说的，都是有这样的服务的，就是很多时候就是我们不清楚实际的内情是什么。I'm just trying to clarify this, like in the
of course, sure.
The border town when the people come in.
Yes, exactly.
They should be able to access the services. Right?
Yeah, they will. CBP will escort them. And these are the services that this is an example of the services they'll receive right here. Especially for the children.
特别太多服务，你看就有医疗、牙医、精神保健 就是小学到12年级的教育、法律资源的帮助、宗教服务、娱乐活动，哇，这么太丰富了吧？Anyway， 不是我能评论的，就是我觉得这是很人道的待遇啊，就是寻求振臂或偷渡进来，只要有一个家庭有小孩子，他们都会把它安置在这个家庭的所谓的服务中心。
So ICE, ICE does what it does, but we don't handle the children. That's Health and Human Services. They provide counseling for the children, education, you name it. All right, we're going to move on. So I don't know if you've heard the term alternatives to detention, ATD. A lot of times what happens is ERO will use technology and case management to monitor non-citizens. And basically what ATD means is instead of taking you, into ICE custody physically, they'll give you an ankle bracelet where you can report to ICE, and the reporting place is 26 Federal Plaza, where my office is.
这个叫居留替代方案 ATD， 这个计划呢，就是用最新的技术和案件管理的方式来监控非公民出庭的情况和对释放条件的遵守情况。比如刚才所说的，有这个他不愿意把它放到拘留所，或是没有严重到一个程度马上递解，他可以就用一个电子的扣放在脚那边那个部分，所以他可以遥控的看到这个人的行动。所以是所谓的 ATD 就是这个意思。
So it can be through a program that's in a cell phone called SmartLink, or GPS monitoring, or telephone reporting. It's the same concept as if someone were reporting to their parole officer, if that makes sense.
这样的话就方便很多，就是不需要大量的使用这个监控的人员监视那个人的行踪。所以透过这个电子的扣 就可以马上知道这个人在哪里等等。所以给那些所谓的保释的那个官员们 ，probation officer 就方便了，他就马上可以知道这个人的情况。
Okay. Let's talk about removal. So, oh, sorry, Pastor Mike.
主要是讲到这个，现在是遣返了。
So, let's say someone in ICE custody receives an order of removal, which will only come from an immigration judge.
就是当 ICE 接到这个法官的判决，这个人需要就被遣返了，他接到这个命令才可以执行这个行动。
So you've received your order of removal. Usually, you will be deported to the country where you are a citizen.
通常呢，就是被遣返的是遣返到原居地，他原来的国籍的国家都遣返到哪一个国家。
Now, there are sometimes we have issues with what we call recalcitrant countries.
但有一种情况呢，所谓的有一些 recalcitrant 的意思就是顽固的、不愿意合作的国家，他拒绝接收这个人回国。
Recalcitrant countries are those countries that don't cooperate with the United States, and they refuse to take their citizens back.
我刚才说的就是他不愿意跟美国政府合作，他拒绝来去接收这是被遣返的他自己的国民。
I won't get into that, but I will say when someone is deported, it's not a quick process.
他不要进入很详细的描写，不过他主要的意思就是，这不是一个很简单的程序，其实蛮复杂的。
We have to work with the consulates here in New York City, and they are the ones that process travel documents for the non-citizens to be returned to their country. So that's why a lot of times I get a call saying, "Hey, Sonia, my cousin has an order of removal. Can you tell me when he's going to be removed?" I don't know. That depends on how quickly the consulate processes their travel documents.
因为就是那个被驱逐的人呢，他有一个旅行证件，那如果他没有，他必须要到他自己的领事馆，在纽约的领事馆去申请这个旅行证件。才能够回到他的国家嘛，对不对？所以当中呢有很多技术性的问题就是有一些国家都不愿意这个签这个旅行证啊等等，很多这复杂性里面。
Okay. So I won't go over everything here, but you see here, ERO removes non-citizens subject. Oops, I was getting ready to say, can you turn your ringer off? I'm guilty. I'm sorry. Hold on, please. I'm so sorry. Oh, my God.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. Let me make sure this one's off, too. Okay. All right, sorry.
Okay.
But you see here, final order of removal issued by an immigration judge or other lawful order.
然后主要是他这个跟我们刚才解释的都差不多了，主要是从法庭里面拿到这个执行令法官判决，然后加以执行。
Okay, so I just wanted you guys to understand, we have a short leash in terms of adhering to federal regulations. We can't just deport anybody. All right, so this is just about the field offices. I did want to show you this. This is important too when you talk about rumors about raids and everything.
这个所谓的很敏感的一些项目，等一下会 讨论一下，就是他们有一些特别一些政策方面的事情。
So this is what we call ICE sensitive locations.
那这所谓敏感的地点。
And if you recall, a few minutes ago, I was saying, or did I? Where, you know, we talked about the sanctuary city and about the churches and that type of thing. This falls under that, and I'll go into a little detail.
所以敏感地点，刚才也稍微提过，政治庇护城哈，纽约这是庇护城，所以 ICE 不能随便进来抓人。然后呢，刚才说教会以前前几年已经发生过了，就是要被驱逐的人跑到教会里面不出来，那 ICE 也没他办法，抓不了。类似这样比较敏感的。
I'm sure you've heard rumors where, oh, ICE went to somebody's, my cousin's kid's school, or ICE went to the church in the middle of the worship, or ICE went to the university. That is not true.
所以他只要澄清一下，很多人误解或误传的，就是 ICE 随便的跑到教会在聚会的时候抓人，或是在大学上课的时候抓人。等等都是误传。
So the ironic thing is the sensitive location policy was actually created by ICE.
其实这个政策，所谓敏感地点的政策，也是 ICE 自己创立出来的。
The reason ICE created the sensitive location policy is, you know, we don't want to, you know, number one, disrupt and, you know, permeate fear throughout a community. So a lot of times, if you do see a targeted investigation, it will be early in the morning or like really, really late at night because we don't want to disturb, you know, the community and scare people.
主要他们是避免就是使社区受到那种很恐慌的状态，所以他们执行的时候，很多时候是很早很早，或是很晚很晚，这样的话不会打扰到社区的安宁。
Make sense? Okay. So I put down some examples of the sensitive locations which we talked about. So again, we don't go to places of worship. We don't go to schools. I've heard so many times, hey, Sonia, an ICE agent came to my son's school and he's only in 4th grade. Not true.
所以呢，刚才提到敏感地点的范例，就比如说教会场所、学校，或是法院前面，或紧急的情况，学校等等，都不是他们执行的地方。
And I don't know if you guys know this, but also like if a child is not a citizen, you can still register him or her in school, okay?
所以大家知道，一个孩子纵使他没有身份，父母没有身份，他自己没有身份，但是他仍然可以接受教育的。这个不因为身份的缘故，不允许孩子上学。
Okay, so schools, universities, now the courthouses. The only time ICE agents will detain someone at the courthouse is because they have not been able to make contact with the person either at their home or some other place. A lot of times, ICE will come to the home and the person is evading ICE. And they've tried everything, and their last recourse is they know the person has a court date. Well, naturally, that's where they're going to go to detain the person.
所以很多时候是因为为什么跑到法院旁边呢？因为就是他经过很多的这个方法，特别到这个人的家里面去逮捕他，但是呢，这个人都没有出现，也不在家。那很多情形就这种他就改换一种方式，就知道这个人肯定是在某一天在法庭举行这个听证，或是 审讯等等，所以那个时候去采取行动是最好的。But this in fact is a kind of confusing information. But sometimes we also receive information that ICE actually targeted people near the courthouse. So now, of course, you clarify the information is because you couldn't locate the person at home or anywhere else, but then the final resort is to go to the courthouse. But
we don't just do...
Right, but the community doesn't think it that way. So
I know.
I read some newspaper and say, well, that's now ICE is targeting people, arresting them at the courthouse.
Right. And again, the only time that will happen is if they've exhausted all avenues, and we call that exigent circumstances, meaning that's the last resource that they have to go to the courthouse because they know the person has a court hearing. But ICE is not standing outside courthouses just looking for non-citizens.
我主要他诚信的就是逼不得已，到了真的没有办法的时候，他们才去courthouse 那边等待那个人的出现，否则的话，一般情形他们不会这样做。
And it's an unfortunate rumor because a lot of times, the immigrant community, if they have a court hearing, it could be for an asylum hearing to see if the judge is going to give them asylum or, not remove them or whatever. And then they don't show up out of fear. So that's why it's important, for you guys to understand what's a rumor and what is not. And that's why it's important for me to ensure that you know the difference.
就主要他是要把这个分别告诉各位就是不要因为一个情况而好像就把它变成的是一个 ICE 的 policy 或政策，这不是他们的政策。
You don't want to take a chance on missing a court hearing because you heard misinformation.
所以有一些人因为害怕 ICE 的缘故呢，他们就不出庭了，结果就失去了这个被听证的这个机会，这样也影响他们申请政庇的结果。
I know this happens a lot because I get a lot of calls. Okay, so I kind of messed up on the font color. But these are general information resources that I wanted you guys to have. So the first one is the ICE appointment scheduler. So, we talked about being detained and maybe an alternative to detention. So my favorite guy in the blue, let's look, now first you were a victim, now you're a criminal. So let's see.
他找你做例子，刚才你是受害人，现在你是犯罪的，只是一个例子。
So let's say now you were detained and you were told that instead of being detained in a facility, you're told to check in. So what you would do is let's say you had an appointment for Thursday, you can't make it. Want me to stop there?
OK， 就是他的意思是说，如果比如他是 ICE 告诉你说你已经快要进入被拘留的状态，然后呢，就是要你出席到他的办公室里面就安排这个约见。
So you can go to this website, theice.gov/check-in, and you can change your appointment time. Because we don't want you to not show up. So we do try to provide, you the resources in case, because it is hard to, make phone calls I work for ICE and sometimes I don't know who to call in our agency because there are just so many components.
Let me clarify a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Personally, I don't understand, for example, if you ask the person to contact you and yet the person is basically in the process of being detained, so you don't worry about a runaway become fugitive?
Well, no, we can't worry about that because we deal with so many people, and I think that's another, that's another piece of misinformation. That's why there are systems in place, and all we can do is hope that people follow the procedures.
Under what circumstances you would allow the person to simply schedule an appointment and talk to you rather than, you actually take action to detain that person?
Okay, so let me clarify that. This ICE check-in is only after you've been detained and you've been approved for an alternative to detention.
Got it. OK， 我稍微澄清一下，因为有点对我来说也是很模糊。他这个所谓的给你约见了，就是这个人已经被拘留了，但是呢，他还是允许他可能是保释吧，就跑出来，就是被保释出来。然后呢，再约见在哪一个时候再去做进一步的调查，大概是这样子。So does it involve the bond bailout process?
I'm going to get to that, but I just wanted to be clear, like the ICE appointment schedule is only after you've been detained and you've been told, okay, we're not going to hold you in an ICE facility, you can report in. That's only when you have that formal permission. Let me make that
这
clear.
种情形只有一个经过他们允许，你可以回家等候，得到了这样的允许，才可以使用这个所谓的 ICE appointment 这个约见的情况。但是这样做呢，也不表示这个人不被拘留，他已经被拘留了，但是可能 ICE 觉得这个人还没有到一种情况呢，去长期的留在那个地方，他允许他出来，然后呢向 ICE 去报告，主要是这样子。Clear? I hope I explained clear. I'm not sure.
So now the bond acceptance, that's where my office is too, in the same building. That's if you've been released or if you're going to be released or you have been released, if you're going to be released on bond, then you would pay your bond at the bond office at 26 Federal.
所以有两种情况，一种的就是他允许这个人出外，不需要就保释，是认为这个情况可以，就还是让这个人回到家里面约个时间再回去处理事情。另外一种呢是保释，就是要付钱的。就所谓的保释 bond 就是这个地址就去交钱交款保释。
And just keep in mind the bond and the appointment scheduler are after you've been detained by ICE, you've been assigned a deportation officer, it's after you go through that process.
所以两个程序都会牵涉到有一个所谓的遣返的官员，说 deportation officer， 这个官员呢，就是会整个过程是跟当事人呢去进行这方面，一方面就是拿到特殊的允许，他可以回家，然后再约个时间见面，不需要保释金，不需要付钱。另外一个呢，就需要付钱，但是都是在这个 deportation officer 的这个管理之下。
It's very similar to being assigned a parole officer.
就好像一个法庭所谓的一种 parole， 就是一个保释的一个 officer， 就是基本上就是保释了，就是还没有到一个程度很严重，允许这个人付一笔钱就可以出来等候法庭的审讯，这个是保释的过程。
Okay, and so let's say you have a general inquiry. Let's say you have a cousin visiting, they're a non-citizen, and you may think they were detained by ICE or you don't know. You can actually you can email the ERO office. you can give them, you know, the name of the person and say, hey, I think my cousin is detained by ICE, can you tell me? And this is the outreach mailbox only for ERO. That's what you would use it for.
很多时候就不一定是当事人，可能是当事人的家属，可能是亲人、朋友等等。那如果出现这种情况，不知道是否有保释，或者是不知道整个程序怎么样，可以使用这样的一个联系方式，可以找到答案。
And alternatively, if you have the person's last name and date, country of birth, or what we call an A number, which is assigned if they're detained by ICE, this to me is the best resource. You go on here and you put the person's name in. Anyone, the public has access to this, and it will tell you if they're detained by ICE and where they're located, like what facility. Okay?
Yeah, 这个很好，很管用，我用过了就是我上次跟你说，在监狱探访的时候，我要找到这个人是否人在监狱，我打进他的名字，然后打他的绿卡号码，不是绿卡就是外籍的号码，每个案件都有一个 A number， 这 A number 打进去还有姓名，马上就跑出来这个人现在在哪一个监狱。是怎么样的情况？所以这个 locator 这个网站蛮好的。
Anyone arrested, detained by ICE will receive an A number.
那每一个被 ICE 所逮捕、拘留的人，他们都会给一个所谓的 A 的号码。
Yeah, and we assign that for privacy to the person being detained.
为了每一个被拘留的人，都是根据这样的政策来立案的。
Okay, and this wraps up my presentation. I'm sorry it was so long, but Pastor Mike wanted to make sure you guys got all the information that you needed, and I definitely wanted to address some of the information in the rumor mill.
Yeah, 这是他今天要给大家分享的内容哈，就是谢谢他Thank you very much, Sonia. I appreciate your coming.
Thank you.